The world today is passing through one of its most unsettled periods. There is instability all around. We see that geopolitical tensions are intensifying. And of course, we also see evidence of global economic volatility. There's a cost of living crisis that is sweeping much of the world. So, all in all, the world today is fraught and unstable. We see the resurgence of East-West tensions. The Ukraine war itself has divided the world. And the standoff between the United States and China continues to be the defining strategic reality at the global level today. On the other hand, when the need is so great for countries to show solidarity and come together to address shared common challenges, we actually see that global solidarity is in very short supply. In fact, multilateralism, international cooperation has been on the retreat in recent years. So this is clearly a defining moment for the world. And it is time for the international community to really step back and take stock of how they are going to proceed with dealing with all the difficult cross-boundary issues that affect pretty much all the countries today. So in this environment, against this backdrop, the UN Secretary General António Guterres has taken a major initiative to do precisely this, to take stock and see if countries can come together and agree on what he calls a pact for the future. So this is very much a UN initiative. He wants a summit to take place in September 2024. And before that, he wants to see negotiations between member states of the United Nations to deal with what he calls a once-in-a-generation opportunity to strengthen multilateralism and renew the commitment to core principles and at the same time adopt an action-oriented, not just words, but action-oriented pact for the future, which will set out, or it's envisioned to set out concrete responses to global challenges. The summit will be preceded by intergovernmental negotiations on a whole host of issues. And as part of the preparation for these discussions, the UN Secretary General has issued 9 policy briefs. The latest, which he issued last month, is called A New Agenda for Peace. And this policy paper really deals with issues of peace and security, which are, of course, vital today, given the tensions that we see and the conflicts that are raging across the world. And this agenda for peace offers 12 specific proposals in 5 priority areas. Because as the Secretary General puts it, the post-Cold War period is over and the world is moving towards a new global order. Nobody quite knows what this is. But what is its defining feature is that it is multipolar. Now, this, according to Guterres, makes international cooperation really imperative to avoid more human suffering. So his ambitious policy brief prioritizes 5 areas. The first is to encourage prevention, as he calls it, at the global level by tackling geopolitical divisions and strategic risk. And here, the paper calls for a ban on the use of nuclear weapons. And of course, it also calls for their eventual elimination. Now, in my view, there is a major omission here because perhaps prevention should also have tackled or banned any resort to the use of force because actually it's conventional conflicts that we see all across the world. In fact, the policy brief itself says that the number of armed conflicts in the past decades have really been going up, and the number of conflict-related deaths have reached a 28-year high last year. So there was a need really for this document to also call for a prohibition on the use of force. Now, the second priority area is what he calls the paradigm for prevention, which countries have to undertake internally to deal with all sorts of all forms of violence, and of course also ensure the meaningful participation of women and respect for various dimensions of human rights. Now, this is an ambitious goal as well. The third area, which will be of particular relevance, of course, for Pakistan, concerns UN peacekeeping. And this proposes updating peacekeeping operations to adjust to changing conflict environments, and especially challenges posed by conflicts that are unresolved, where there really isn't any peace to keep. So a whole series of actions are proposed in this policy brief. And for Pakistan, it's very, very relevant, because Pakistan has been amongst the world's top troop contributing countries to UN peacekeeping operations for the last 6 or more decades. In fact, since 1960, over 200,000 Pakistani servicemen and women have served in 46 UN missions in 26 countries across the world. Currently, we have over 4,000 service personnel who are deployed in over 10 or about 10 missions. Now, the fourth priority in this policy document is the prevention of the weaponization of emerging domains and technologies to promote responsible innovation. The last priority action area, also again very relevant. Of course, all these areas are relevant for Pakistan, but this is also particularly relevant for Pakistan, is the recommendation to build a stronger collective security machinery, including reform of the Security Council, the General Assembly, the UN's Disarmament Agency, and other UN multilateral institutions. Now, the document does call, and the Secretary General himself has made this call himself several times, for expedited negotiations for Security Council reform to make it more just and more representative, and to democratize its working methods. Now, of course, there is firm consensus amongst UN member states on democratizing its working methods, but consensus has been elusive on the fundamentals of Security Council reform, especially the wide gap that exists between countries that want permanent membership of the Security Council for themselves, and other countries like Pakistan, who are opposed to adding more permanent members, because the argument is that this would only reinforce centers of power and privilege, whereas reform should really be about making the Council more democratic, more accountable, more representative. And therefore, Pakistan and other countries propose adding more elected non-permanent members to the Council. Now, unless this difference and other differences are resolved, I do not believe that negotiations can be expedited and will continue to elude member states. Now, having circulated this and other policy briefs to UN member countries, it's now going to be up to them to discuss these and, of course, offer their own proposals to arrive at a consensus for a pact for the future. So really, the big question is, when at a time when the world is so polarized and so divided, meaningful and substantive agreement can be forged on a future framework for multilateral cooperation. I think the jury is out on this.